All right, so welcome everyone to class 48, Biblical Foundation, which is the book of Genesis, the book of beginnings. Praise the Lord. So we're going to review the Noahic covenant, the Noahic covenant. And so let's start with Lucas. Can you please read Genesis 9:12 in English? Genesis
Mm.
9:12.
And God said, "This is the token of the covenant which I made between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations."
Very nicely pronounced. One suggestion, the word creature, in English, you don't always pronounce every vowel. So you said creature, but in this case, the EA is like one sound, so it's creature. Very good. Remember that English is irregular, so you just have to learn, oh, okay, here. But often an EA together is pronounced just like an E or like an open E, like creature. So let me try that in Portuguese. 9:12. E disse Deus, este é o sinal da aliança que ponho entre mim e vós, e entre toda a alma vivente que está convosco por gerações eternas. All right, so Pedro, can you kindly read question 1, please?
What kind of covenant is this called?
Very good. All right, so what do you think? So it just said in 9:12, Genesis 9:12, a token of the covenant. So what kind of covenant are we looking at?
A perpetual covenant.
Absolutely right. You can see, and you pick that up, that nice word right from the end of the verse for perpetual generations. There's another biblical word for something that's perpetual. Do you remember?
No, I don't.
It's everlasting.
Ever.
Okay, so you already know the word forever, and ever has a sense of all, and then everlasting is similar. And as usual in English, there's lots of words that have pretty much the same meaning, which means that for poetry and Bible verses, they have a wonderful choice of words that go best into the verse that have pretty much the same meaning. So very good. Okay, so Lucas is our Bible verse reader this evening. So Lucas, can you please read Genesis 9:13 in English?
I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth.
Very nice. So for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And in Portuguese, let me try. O meu arco tenho posto nas nuvens. Este será por sinal da aliança entre mim e a terra. Well, that's really good news. Okay, so Pedro, can you kindly read question 2 in English?
What could a bow in the cloud be?
Okay, what do you think?
The rainbow.
Absolutely right. Correct. Well done. And so, Lucas, can you go ahead and now read 2 verses, Genesis 9:14 to 15 in English, please?
And it shall come pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud, and I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh.
Very well pronounced, Lucas. Excellent. So let me try that in Portuguese. 14 to 15. E acontecerá que quando eu trouxer nuvens sobre a terra, aparecerá o arco nas nuvens. Então me lembrarei da minha aliança que está entre mim e vós, e entre toda a alma vivente de toda a carne. E as águas não se tornarão mais em dilúvio para destruir toda a carne. Okay, more good news. All right, I think, Pedro, it's your turn. Question 3 in English.
Okay. Is this more for God to remember or for us?
All right, well, it says there, uh, and I will remember my covenant. But does God need to remember or do we need to remember?
We need God more.
I agree. It's to help us remember. Okay, so let's go to our terrific Bible verse reader this evening. Wow, look at this. So Lucas, can you go ahead and read Genesis 9:17, please, in English?
And God said unto Noah, This is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth.
Very good. Now, one thing, Lucas, when you say establish, you say established. And in English, you don't need to emphasize the ed, so it's established. All right, like almost no e. It's a little difficult, so it's established. Okay. In fact, you're pronouncing it like an old way, like they did back when they translated the Bible. Established. I can't even pronounce it that way. Very good. Okay, okay, I haven't read. So let me try that in Portuguese. E disse Deus a Noé: Este é o sinal da aliança que tenho estabelecido entre mim e entre toda a carne que está sobre a terra. All right, so Pedro, can you kindly read question 4 in English?
Why did God bother with a visual token of the covenant? Isn't his word enough?
Yeah, so what do you think? Hey, we should read his word and know his word and just remember via the word. But why did he decide to give us a visual token?
And I don't know.
Well, again, it's kind of like he wants to help us remember, right? So for some people don't read their Bible like you guys do, or know the don't aren't reminded when they look up in the sky and it's raining and the sun's out and there's a rainbow. And so one way to think of it, it's a loving reminder. So here, I'm going to put that up into where is that? Here we are. Okay, a loving reminder. All right, so we can every time we look at a rainbow, we can think how loving and good our God is. All right, so Lucas, are you ready for the next Bible verse? Genesis 9, two verses. Genesis 9:18 and 19, please.
And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread.
Overspread. Very good. Wow. So humankind begins all over again, all descended from Noah and his three sons. So let me try this in Portuguese. E os filhos de Noé, que da arca saíram, foram Sem, Cão e Jafé. E Cão é o pai de Canaã. Canaã. Estes três foram os filhos de Noé, e destes se povoou toda a terra. All right.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you. And Pedro, are you ready for question 5 in English, please?
Yes. Who are the descendants of Shem?
Okay, so there's a single name for people, the peoples descended from Shem. Do you remember?
The Semites.
Absolutely right. It's a little bit different. So it's like no H, but you're perfectly right. And what's the famous word that we hear all the time now in the news from around the world that includes the word Semite?
Anti-Semitic.
Exactly right, the adjective. And you can say, the noun would be an anti-Semite, but anti-Semitic, the adjective, is what we hear all the time because a lot of evil people hate the Jews, and they've never stopped hating the Jews. So anti-Semitism is everywhere. Okay, so Lucas, can you kindly read question 6 in English?
What peoples descend from that group?
Okay, good question. All right, so this is more difficult. So, all right, you already have an idea, but of the main group that descended from Shem and are part of the Semites. So, but who are they? Can you think of? So, first of all, when I'm thinking of that, who are the people I'm talking about that are the main group that are descended from the Semites, that are the Semites?
The Jews.
Absolutely right. So Jews. So when we say anti-Semitic, that's exactly what we're saying. It's like anti-Jewish. But okay, now the Semites are more people than just the Jews. And we will learn this in upcoming Bible history. But for instance, Abraham and Sarah are not just the father and mother of the Jews of one nation. They're the father of and mother of a number of nations. And what are some of the other nations that then uh, descended from Abraham?
The Arabs.
Absolutely.
Is it correct?
Excellent. Okay, Pedro, you're such a good student and you remember even the name in English. Okay, so
Thank
that's the second big group. And now there are some other groups that are a little bit more difficult to remember. But can you think of any other nearby nation that is still a known people today that descended from Abraham?
No, I don't know.
Okay, so one, and they're not really around now, but it's the Assyrians. Okay, so they come up later in the Bible, and you can find them in museums. So Assyrian art and archaeology. But there's a country that's very important still today because it's one of the centers of terrorism around the world. So what country do you think is the biggest supporter of terrorism in the world?
I also don't know.
All right, can you think? Let's see. Well, then the modern name of the country is Iran. But there's an
Okay.
old name of a former name of the country and the types of people that's been around for much longer, and that is Persian. Okay, so the Persians. And then the
Mm,
last are actually the Syrians. Okay, so in northern Africa, there's Syria. Uh, Not really north, sorry, not Northern Africa, but in the Middle East as well. Okay, so wow. All right, so all of those are officially Semites. But when we say anti-Semitic, everyone knows it's referring to anti-Jewish. Okay, so let's go now and so we finished our review of last week, and let's go into an introduction of the Canaanite curse. Wow. Okay, but before we get there, Pedro, can you kindly read question A in English?
What peoples do we believe are descended from him?
Okay. All right, so that's another tough question. So let's put on our Bible hats. And we know in the Bible, it gives us the history of mankind. What other people in the book of Genesis, for instance?
The Egyptians.
Absolutely. So they're part of the group of Ham. Excellent. Well done. Can you think of some other people that show up in the Bible? For instance, the Queen of Sheba. Where is she from?
From I think he said Ethiopia.
Uh,
Ethiopia.
exactly right. In English, Ethiopia. Very good.
Ethiopia.
Okay. And then there's some others, that are nearby. Sumeria. Okay. Also, there's the Phoenicians. Okay, sort of a tougher word. So the Sumeria is no longer exists as a nation, but in biblical times it did. And then Phoenicia, let me see. I think that's Phoenicia, something like that. Sorry. And there's one other group that we think might be, it's not clear, but it's a rather large group now. And I'll give you a hint. In the Battle of Armageddon, the Bible tells us over 200 million soldiers come from this part of the world, or at least they attack from the east in order to come to attack Israel. And where do we think 200 million soldiers could come from?
Mm. From uh, Assyria.
Well, that's but that remember that Assyrian is no longer exists. That was an old empire, and this is a big empire, a big current country that will be able to send 200 million soldiers to the Battle of Armageddon to destroy Israel. So it's not easy. China. So it's not clear, but there's speculation that the descendants of Ham also include the Asians. Okay, so it'd be
Mm.
Japanese, the Chinese, and peoples further east. Okay, so let's go to the next, and that's just a guess. It's kind of interesting to know all this. So, Lucas, can you read question B in English, please?
What peoples do we believe are descended from Japheth?
Okay, very good. Okay, so now this is interesting. So most of the peoples who we believe are descended from Japheth are uh, their names are from later biblical times. So in the times of Abraham, you're not really seeing a lot of these names. They're not really familiar names. So they seem to be, but these names, for instance, are very big in the New Testament. Okay, so what nations are very big in the New Testament? And perhaps we go, oh, okay, that's who descended from Japheth.
Is the Romans.
Absolutely. That's the big one, the biggest, let's say. So the Romans. right? Who would conquer and rule Israel at the time of Jesus' arrival. And who else? Where was Paul sent on his first missionary trip?
Um, to the Minor Asia,
Okay, well,
like this.
maybe you're right. Maybe it's the second I'm thinking of, but I'm thinking of Greece and the Greeks. Okay, so there's
Mm,
another people we believe are descended from the youngest son. Now, there's also one that's a little more complicated, but they're called Aryans, who, and their history is between Pakistan and India and Afghanistan. And then there's a pretty big group. So we already spoke of the Greeks and the Romans, but we believe perhaps that the Europeans also. Okay, so most the Europeans come from the third son. All right, so wow, look at that. Okay, so now it's Pedro's turn to read three Bible verses. So Pedro, can you read Genesis 9:20 to 22, please?
And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Can, Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without.
Okay, a couple of small pronunciation suggestions. It, you would think it would be vineyard because a vine by itself is vine. But when you add on the yard for some reason to make it easier, it's not vineyard, it's vineyard. Okay, so the
Vineyard.
so the I is closed. So English is irregular, so you just have to learn the words sometimes. And the father of Canaan. So the emphasis is on the beginning. So it's not Canaan, it's Canaan.
Canaan. Okay.
All right, let me try that. Thank you. Let me try that in Portuguese. Começou Noé a ser lavrador na terra e plantou uma vinha, e bebeu do vinho e embebedou-se, e descobriu-se no meio da sua tenda, e viu Cão, o pai de Canaã, a nudez do seu pai, e fez-lo saber a ambos seus irmãos no lado de fora.
I have one
Wow,
suggestion.
please.
I think you said embe, embebeduce,
Uh-huh.
something like this, but it is embebedeus,
Uh,
embebedeus.
embebedeu. All right, so the emphasis is on embebedeu. But here it says OU, embebedou-se.
Ah, okay,
Okay, so sometimes the old Portuguese is a little bit different from what the correct would be today, right? So,
okay.
all right, I know you probably don't have your ACF Bible in front of you. So
Yeah,
you're like hearing it. All right, but thank you.
yeah.
So wow, this is a very strange story. This is like what just happened. So Lucas, can you please read question C in English?
This is the first told case of with in the Bible.
Very good. Okay, now I add told, meaning spoken. So this probably has happened before in history, but this is the first specific case given of what in the Bible?
Of the vines,
Yeah, drinking too much wine.
also this.
Okay, and so what's that called, drinking too much wine?
I don't know in what it is in English.
Okay, it's a different word than the Portuguese one, so I'm going to give it to you in the chat. So it's drunk.
Drunk.
Okay.
Okay.
And then this is the first case of drunkenness. Okay, I'll put that in the chat also. Wow. Okay. First case told of drunkenness. Okay, so Pedro, please give us Genesis 9:23 in English.
Okay. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness.
All right, very good. Well pronounced. So let me
Thank
try
you.
that in Portuguese. Então, tomaram Sem e Jafé uma capa e puseram-na sobre ambos os seus ombros, e indo virados para trás, cobriram a nudez do seu pai, e os seus rostos estavam virados, de maneira que não viram a nudez do seu pai. Wow. And let me, you know what? You actually you gave the correct pronunciation of Japheth. Japhet. I was when I heard you say it, I think that's correct, right? Because they're not modern words, they're old words. I was saying Japheth, but no, I think you're right, Japhet. Okay, more the emphasis on the latter part. Okay, so Lucas, can you kindly read question D, please?
How does Shem and Japheth's reaction different from Shem's?
Very good. Now, in this case, Lucas, the REA is pronounced separate. Okay, so remember English is so you were very good. You were following my prior comment that EA together is often pronounced just as a simple E. But in this one, you have to think what does the RE mean here in this one? It's a, and I put it in the chat. Okay, in this case, it's like re meaning action again or action against. And so in this case, it's not reaction, but then you wouldn't hear no, it's reaction. Okay, so often when RE starts a word, it's then pronounced by itself. So react, reaction, redo. All of those give the idea of, okay, doing it another time. Okay, very good. So what do you think? How does Shem and Japheth's reaction differ from Shem's? No, I mean
From him. From him.
uh, yes. So
Okay.
Shem's is correct, and so it's not, I meant Ham's. Ham's and no, I'm getting confused. The reaction, yes, is from Ham's. Okay, it's Shem and Japheth's reaction different from Ham's.
Because they honored honored their father.
Yes, correct. And so it's interesting. Uh, if you think of it, today, okay, if you went into your parents' bedroom and you forgot to knock, and it's a hot day, and you saw your father naked, that would not be the end of the world. You just would like close the door, okay, quietly and let him sleep. Okay, so this is like, and I think you're right, because in the culture of the day then, this was disrespectful. And remember, what he also did is he saw his father's nakedness. Did he cover his father? No. Now, when someone's naked and from being drunk, then you're like, this is not intentional. Okay, this is not good, right? So he's not naked to stay cool. He's naked because he was
Yeah.
like, all right. So no, it's embarrassing. So he didn't cover him. And and what else did he do? He immediately went and told his two brothers. So maybe he's confused, but that's like it's not that's well, telling the brothers, well, it was good he told them because he did not do the right thing. So it then meant that Shem and Japheth could do the right thing. But you see just a series of errors. But let's go ahead and read now. Pedro, can you read Genesis 9:24, please?
And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him.
Okay, so let's go. Lucas, can you read? Oh, I forgot to read the Portuguese. E despertou Noé do seu vinho e sobe o que seu filho menor lhe fizera.
I
Uh,
have a suggestion.
please.
I think you say Sobi, but it is Sobi.
Thank you. S-O-U. You're quite right. So instead of sobi, a sobi.
Sobi. Sobi is like to go up.
Exactly right. Instead of to know. Okay, thank you so much. All right, so Lucas, can you read question E in English?
Why was what Shem did so serious?
Serious.
Serious.
Very good. Okay, so again, this is somewhat of a cultural question. I think Pedro has already responded, saying he was not respecting his father. Uh, but can you think of something else? Why? Because we're going to see this is not an incident that God liked at all. It wasn't like a innocent mistake. It wasn't an innocent mistake on Shem's part. So what
Yeah.
why is this so serious, what just happened?
Because he did not respected her father, his father, because he could help him,
Hmm,
but
true. I agree.
yes,
So he did a number of incorrect things, and I think you said, and remember, which commandment uh, tells us to respect our parents, our mother and father.
the fifth fifth
Yeah, I
fifth
think you're right.
commandment.
Yeah. And so even though they have not received the commandments yet, we already believe that they've in some cases they're given orally or that they were known, that God had just not written it in stone yet. And so this is the first case of disrespecting a parent. And so God was like, uh, you should have known better. I already told you. And this is now the first public, obvious case. And remember, Noah was not guiltless. Noah sinned as well. How did he sin?
He drank much wine.
Exactly right. He got drunk. Okay. And the Bible tells us again and again that it's like in moderation. Okay. Some Christians believe that it's biblical not to drink at all. But a lot of Christians believe no, there's lots of instances of wine drinking, including Jesus making wine at the wedding, uh, but that we are always told in moderation. And so Noé, for some strange reason, he was not moderate. And so
But
his, yes,
I think, I think that was a new thing that he doesn't knew.
yeah, he doesn't know. Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah,
not so sure because remember what was the world like in the days before the flood?
was very on the front like
Yeah.
this.
It was very decadent, right? Very decadent.
Yes.
And Noah hopefully didn't, he never drank excessive, but he saw drunk people all the time, is what I'm suggesting. Okay. So it wasn't like he took too much alcohol by mistake, too much wine by mistake. No, he knew. He knew you drink too much wine, I'm going to be drunk like all those people before the flood.
Mhm.
So anyway, so let's go ahead. We're going to finish up with a couple more questions. And so that was Luke Pedro. Pedro, can you kindly read question F?
Sham's reaction on the face of it doesn't seem. 1 minute, please. Sham's reaction on the face of it doesn't seem so different from what a son will do today. How we know how brave his sin was.
Okay. I think I didn't hear how do we know? So you have to make sure you got that verb there. How do we know?
How do we know?
Okay. So this, I'm repeating what I said earlier, and that is, hey, today it doesn't sound so strange to see your father naked by mistake. And I think many worldly people would like maybe close the door and then go and tell like the rest of it, ha 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 ha, right? Okay.
Yeah.
No, a Christian wouldn't do that, right? But many people of the world were like, ah, I saw Daddy naked, ah, ha, ha," and everyone would be like, hey, he drank too much. Okay. So, but how do we know that this is how grave this sin was? How do we know from what the Bible is about to tell us? Do we know that this is a very serious sin that occurred?
Or the commandments of to honor our fathers, our
Yeah,
parents.
I agree with you, and we just mentioned that. But how do we know that this was so serious to God that He did what?
I don't know.
And it's gonna in the next verse. So remember, sometimes the answer is in the next verse. And so we'll see that now, and Lucas is going to read it. So Lucas, can you read Genesis 9:25, please?
And he said, Cursed be Haran, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren.
Wow. Okay. So do you see what he did to, it's a separate question, but he did to Shem's eldest son. Cursed, cursed be Canaan. Wow. So because of Shem's sin, grave sin, uh, there was a curse. So essentially, God cursed the family. Wow. Okay, let me try this in Portuguese. And that's tough. I mean, to curse. Wow. E disse, maldito seja Canaã, servo dos servos seja aos seus irmãos. Wow. Okay. So let's go for the last question, which is now Pedro. Can you read question G in English, please?
This is the first example of what biblical principle.
Okay. So now it's a tough question, but think what just happened. God didn't curse Shem. He cursed Canaan. So that's where I'm asking, where is this? This is the first example of what biblical principle. And this biblical principle is more in the Old Testament than the New Testament. But can you think what I'm getting at? What happens that God cursed the son?
Be cursed by the sins of the father. The
Yes, the father's sin. Okay, and so this principle is what? Well, there's actually a verse uh, in Exodus that maybe we'll study later, and I'll just read it. Visiting the inequity of the fathers upon the children. Okay, so another way to think of it is that the consequences of the sin of the fathers is upon the children. Okay, that's from Exodus 34:7, which is a tough biblical concept or principle. And we'll see in the New Testament that it's not necessarily that way, right? Because the New Testament tells us specifically that who's responsible for their own sin is that person. Okay, the children of the sinner are not responsible for the father's or mother's behavior, correct? But what the idea is getting at is that there are generational consequences. Okay, so you sin gravely, and you're an adult, particularly. It doesn't just impact your life; it has consequences, perhaps for the next generation and the next generation. Okay, for instance, if you think is if someone in a family, if the father in a family is a drunkard, an alcoholic, what happens with
the
some
sons
frequency? Sorry?
the sons will be called sons of the drunkard man,
Okay,
I
but
guess.
not just that. They will be drunks themselves. Okay, so in that sense, so there's a consequence. One, the father sins and sins seriously by drinking over and over drinking, getting drunk. And this has an impact on the family. Okay, the world would tell us that, you know what? It's kind of like inherited. If your father was an alcoholic, then you are more likely to be an alcoholic. Uh, in some ways, that's what this biblical principle is getting at. There are consequences. You sin seriously, it can and will impact future generations. Okay. We know that they aren't responsible, but they will be poorly influenced or impacted by serious sin done by their father, done by the grandfather, who knows? Okay. So an interesting and difficult concept, but here's the first example, it seems, that God has cursed the son for what the father did. So we'll have to think about that more. Very strange. Okay, so any questions or comments in English before we stop the recording?
I have one.
Please.
Are there any difference from people to people without the S?
I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said? Between people and people what?
People and peoples in
Yes.
between two words.
Good point. So it's a very good question because normally in English, If one people is what? It's a person. Okay,
Yes.
so that's singular. So when we think of people, we think, well, that's already plural. And you're right. Okay, so people is more than one person. Then what possibly does peoples mean? Okay,
Much, much people.
exactly. Well, it's a good question because think of it this way. So obviously, people is a group of persons. So it's a group. The idea of peoples is then several groups. And that's exactly was
Mm,
the intention. Okay. So it's which are the peoples descended from Shem? Because if you
mm,
said just people, we would think, oh, that's the only people from Shem or the Jews. Well, no, but there's more than one people descended from Jews. So you see, in that sense, peoples represents an ethnic group. And so peoples is more like nations.
I understand now.
Okay, it's a good question though. Good question. Because it's like no,
Thank you.
on the surface, like no, people already is plural. Okay, any other
Yeah.
question or comment? That was good.
No, I have no more.
All right.
Yeah.
God bless you. Very good.